Hi, everyone. I'm Lila, the Split coach and the co-founder of Split.fyi. And welcome back to another Splitting Smart, where we have real conversations with professionals who see the raw side of divorce and help people move through it smarter, stronger, and hopefully with a little more peace. So today I'm sitting down with someone I've interviewed before and genuinely super respect, Jordan Rosenberg, a family law attorney and partner at Bierman LLP in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Um, eh, yeah, hi. And we're actually going to be diving into something that doesn't really get talked about enough, right? It's the moment where you start second guessing your lawyer, thinking they're not on your side, and maybe they don't get you, or maybe they're also too friendly with your ex's attorney. So I see this happen a lot, and it isn't always what you think it is. And I think that's something really to highlight. Plus, if you're feeling that way, how are ways that you can communicate with your lawyer around that and get clear on your relationship with them, because it is another relationship that you have through this process, right? So, and it's a very important one. So we'll be unpacking that. And yeah, it's good to have you, Jordan.
Oh, fired up to be here, Lila. Yeah, thanks for having me back. I know it's been a couple minutes for you guys.
Yes, it has. And, I always say, I'm like, these are the most important conversations because I think people are, constantly second guessing themselves around all the relationships they have
Yeah.
around them when they're going through something so heated and so transitional as divorce, right? Plus,
Yep.
it's usually most people's first time that they have to deal with the law, which is scary because there's a lot of language we don't understand. Um,
Absolutely.
yep. And for some reason, they look at lawyers as really scary people. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to humanize it, especially with you, because you are super, human first. And I love all the things that you highlight in your, social media platform. And you're really amplifying the fact that, hey, we are people, we are humans. We're
No,
here to
we
help
are
you.
scary. No, we're
Yeah.
scary. But
Yeah.
no, I think, and not to kind of take it away, but I think that those are really valid concerns. And like that is, of
Mhm.
course, something that I hear constantly. And
Mhm.
you always have to kind of put yourself in the client's position, right? And so what we were talking about before, Lila, is like even just picking up the phone and calling someone about your divorce
Mhm.
literally sounds like the worst thing you could ever do in your life, right? So
Completely.
just articulating it to a third party and nonetheless an actual lawyer
Mhm.
sucks, right? I was saying like I don't even want to call my HVAC guy because
Yeah.
it's a, you know what I mean? And they're, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. And even then you're kind of thinking, well, wait, are they just trying to, get an
Right.
extra buck out of me by fixing something that's not necessarily broken? So
Right.
that's why I think even just selecting a lawyer is so important. And I mean,
Mhm.
interview people. I mean, that's the one thing I would tell people who are just
Mhm.
starting a course is first off, take that deep breath. If that's a decision that, you're moving forward with, take the deep breath and interview people. And I think you
Mm.
have to trust your spidey sense a little bit when you're
Mhm.
talking to people because like you said, it's like, I'm not like other lawyers. There's some lawyers that are very business oriented and maybe that's what you want or what you need. And there's some that are more, I think, relatable and, sort of that partnership mentality. And it really just kind of depends on what your comfort level is and what you want from this. You know,
Mhm.
there's so much about that initial selection that I mean, you're investing your life into this person, and I think it's really, really, really important to feel comfortable in who you're selecting, right?
Right. I mean, that in fact, I mean, that is fundamental, to be honest. And I always say that I equate it to like doctors, like
Right.
you have to feel confident in the doctor's ability to help you through whatever you're going through. And you don't go for just the first one. You're going to probably get other experts or other people's advice or other doctors' advice before you really make a solid decision. So to your point, it's really important. And it's like, ask them how they operate. Are they available? What's the best way of, communicating? Really important. Is it that they only do emails? Do they ever pick up the phone? Is it last minute? Can they book you in? What does that look like? And it's up to the lawyers to be honest, obviously, around that, which they tend to do. Because look, if they're a busy lawyer and they have their own kind of system and boundaries in place, we get it, respect it, but it might not work for you. And
Yeah.
so, and if that doesn't work for you and you know that you're probably a little needier or you need more of touch points, then, look for someone who can actually like really work with you on that, right?
And to your point that you said earlier, I mean, I think it's so specific where it's, I have clients where, they want me to help coordinate somebody to mow their lawn. You know what I mean? I mean, literally. Like,
Wow.
it's like, I don't care. I'm paying you to do it. You're helping me with this. You do this. And I tell them dude, it's going to cost 3 times the amount of picking up the phone to pay me
Exactly.
to do it than you to actually do it yourself, right?
Right.
And there's other people that just say, look, I don't care. Make me a sausage. I don't care how it's made. This is really what I want, right? So it's
Okay.
really both sides of the spectrum. And so
Hmm.
to your point, it's really important to communicate your needs and what you
Hmm.
expect out of this, because to me, my whole thing is this is a legitimate partnership. And in order for a partnership to work, just like a marriage, right? I guess no pun intended, there has to
Hmm.
be some compromise and there has to be some understanding of what each person needs. So I typically, I draw boundaries. I have my own family. I've got, I'm super responsive to emails and calls because I know it's important to people.
Uh-huh.
But I expect that same courtesy. So on Father's Day, it's not great to get a
No,
text or a call on a Sunday from a client that needs something that's not necessarily an emergency, right? I get that
exactly.
it's an emergency in your head. I appreciate how that's feeling. It's nice to have that mutual respect and understanding. Now, differently for clients, if you prefer in-person meetings, perfect. If you want emails, perfect. If you want, phone calls, perfect. And sometimes, I'll pick up on what that person needs pretty quickly, even if they don't articulate it, where they go on and on and on and on in an email. I say, look, here's a couple bullet points just to kind of like not have you chat GBT or Google
Mhm.
something to like get you to sleep tonight. And
Yeah.
let's talk more comprehensively tomorrow because I don't want you to myopically look at this answer yes or no without further
Hmm.
context.
Right.
I
And
get
spiral.
exactly. And people talk to their friends and they Google stuff. Well, how
Oh,
come in my case? Well, it's hard because every case is different, every personality is
totally.
different, every issue is different. And so, really it's almost one of those things where, if you have a scrape on your knee and you WebMD it, and now all of a sudden you have some, horrible disease,
Right.
that's sort of the same thing. Is like you kind of just you talk to your doctor, you're like, no, it's a scab, it's fine. But so really it's really, I guess the bottom line of this long-winded answer commentary of what you're saying is like make sure you're communicating specifically your needs with your lawyer and have that expectation set both ways. And I think
Right.
that to me, that partnership is important with that mutual respect and understanding.
And being okay with it. Like what I often find, like to what I said earlier, this is new territory for a lot of people. And the law is scary. I mean, there's a lot of rules and regulations that you never thought you would ever need to know, heightened by the fact that this is your life. Like you're thinking your kids, your money, your home, your everything, right? So you're in fear mode, a lot of anxiety, and you're dealing with a lawyer that knows so many things that you will never possibly comprehend, right?
Right.
And I know personally, when I first spoke to my lawyer about things, my brain went into mush. Like when I say mush, I was like, I'm not comprehending anything. It literally sounded like one of those, like, wah, wah, wah. I mean, literally, it was just noise coming out of her. And I'm like, I can't. And so
Yeah.
there's a couple of, techniques I always say. I was like, well, record it always,
Right.
take notes, do whatever, but also don't be afraid to ask the questions,
Absolutely.
ask and repeat. Like, don't rush through it. Just be like, I really don't understand what that means. Can you please repeat it? Can you please make me understand it until I get it? And that's okay to do. So, again, it's like, I don't know if you've ever run into clients who you can feel they're really hesitant to kind of dig deeper. And then, for you guys, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Then clients get angry. Like, wait a minute, you never told me. Nope, I did tell you.
Yeah.
But, right.
Yeah.
So,
Actually just lived that right before we hopped on a call is I
yep.
was I was speaking to one of my clients who, we were going through the terms of an agreement.
Hmm.
And, it's one of my homework assignments to them was like, hey, in advance of this, just take a look at it. And I know it's jargon or you can't understand it, but like highlight stuff that you don't really necessarily understand. and let's
Yep.
walk through it, right?
Hmm.
So I got her comments back, and she's like, "Oh, it's pretty straightforward. Like, I get it." Each comment that I had was, "I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it," right? And
Hmm.
it's, when I said like, "Hey, like, how do you want to go through this? Do you want to go line by line? Do you want to go paragraph by paragraph? Do you want to just highlight what we talked about?" She sort of took that as like almost like a quiz that I was quizzing her. Like, "Oh, no, I get
Okay.
this, I get this." And I told her, I said, like, "This is not a quiz. I just want to make sure you're
Yeah.
understanding. You have all the time you need. Like, let's go through this so that you understand,
Hmm.
you don't have questions." So we both kind of laughed, and that was sort of one of those moments. But I feel like that happens a lot. And I
Hmm.
think just your message is so appropriate. Is like, this is somebody who unfortunately you're paying a lot of money to.
Hmm.
And it goes to that thought process where it's like, look, like what we originally talked about is this person's on your team.
Yeah,
And your lawyer's on your team. Like, you're supposed to understand what that person's telling you. You're supposed to get what your rights are and what your obligations are. And if you are sort of are like I can't read minds, you know what I mean? I can
totally.
do a lot of things really well. I just maybe not read minds, and I don't have my crystal ball like you got. No, I'm kidding. But
I wish.
um, exactly. But I think to me, it's just like with anything, it's in any relationship, it's important to articulate your needs. And if you, like you said, if you have a question about something or you don't get it, ask for an explanation or say, you know what,
Hmm.
like, I literally have no idea what this means. Can you break it down for me in something that I can understand? That's huge. That's huge.
Okay, so that leads me to another thing that I often hear is my lawyer isn't on my side or doesn't like me. And oftentimes they get this feeling from exactly that. So they're taking face value, the lawyer's jargon, talk, speak, whatever, pretty direct. You have to be. It's kind of like a doctor, they kind of harden up a little bit because they can't show that much emotion in it. And so they take it very personally, obviously, because they're totally vulnerable and they're totally emotional. And it makes so much sense. So I can, because I've been there, I get it, right?
Yeah.
But then they don't communicate to the lawyer these things. And so it harbors like this, I don't know, animosity, anger, frustration. Now they're not trusting the very person they need to trust to take them through this process.
Yep.
So how do we mitigate that? Because that, and or is it like, does I can't speak for every lawyer, but is it, quite normal that this happens? And how do you work around it? Like,
I I think if the right answer to that question is that lack of communication and like
mhm,
fear of discussing something is more of a symptom to an underlying problem, right?
totally.
That means if you can't communicate or you're fearful to communicate or you think that I don't like you or whatever, that's a
Mhm,
product of just poor communication and not setting expectations right off the bat, right?
mhm,
Because to me, if it gets to that level, that means something has broken down and there's an issue, right?
mhm, mhm,
That is different, if I have a tough conversation with you and my voice raises a little bit, of
mhm,
course I'm frustrated because we've talked about the same things a lot,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And to me, it's always important that you're understanding that if we're having the same conversation over and over and over again, you're
mhm,
spending a lot of time and money hearing the same thing. So to your point, Layla, it's like, or Layla, sorry,
mhm. It's
if you
okay.
need to write things down or take notes or go slow or say, hey,
Mhm,
can we follow up this conversation with an email so that I understand what we talked about? Like, it's human nature to be frustrated, right? Like, of
mhm.
course, I get personally frustrated. I get professionally frustrated. I get frustrated with my kids. I get like,
I mean,
it's everybody gets frustrated. You know what I'm
right.
saying?
Mhm,
So a product of this job that I have too is like I'm basically taking on other people's problems and bringing them personally home with me, right? So
right.
I think it's reasonable for someone in my position to be frustrated. Now, to mitigate
Absolutely.
to mitigate those, I think it's starting with just expectations. And
Mhm,
it's like, look, let me, Lila, I need you to communicate with me what your
mhm,
needs are. And if you need
mhm,
a weekly call, right, or a weekly recorded call, or if you need me to do emails after each call,
mhm,
or we need to like whatever you need to like understand this, that's what's important to me, right? And
mhm,
sometimes it's just like a big reconnect. It's like, you know what? I'm feeling frustrated. okay, I understand. I get it. I'm kind of feeling that tension also. Why don't you come into the office and let's just clear the air, hash it out. You tell me, whatever it is, you know? And that way, at least professionally, we can get back on the same page,
Yeah,
right? You hear me, I hear you, same thing. And now we're it's like, all right, let's move forward because this is a partnership, right?
right.
That's a little different than having like a tough conversation with a client where it's like, look, Lila, I know that you love the lamp next to the bed. I get it.
Mhm.
100%. I appreciate it. That's a old thing. You love that lamp. You're going to spend $5,000 chasing something that's $250, right?
Right.
So
Mhm.
I need to be clear with that and say, like, look, I'm not against you. I'm just like, if you march this out and we bring it up 30,000 feet, you're going to look back at this and if we really fight about that, and you're going to say, Rosenberg, why did we spend all this time and money fighting about the lamp when I could just go to IKEA and buy a new one,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So I think in that moment, it's really difficult to hear the logical advice, right? Because I think some lawyers would be your cheerleader and just tell you things that you want to hear. And I want to fight for that thing. Oh, perfect. Let's go fight for that thing. File a motion. Now you pay me 5,000. And I don't care
No,
that I just spent all your money, right? I think it's in those moments where I'm like fighting in quotes with my clients that sort of create that tension. That's different than you feel annoyed with me. You know what I mean?
right.
It's those
Totally different.
isolated conversations versus like you feel annoyed with me. And I
Yeah.
think both are really important. And I think both happen a lot.
Yes, they do. And, it's interesting because I want to highlight this that a lot of times, because I honestly, I felt it myself, so I can say it. I've been in that position
Yep.
where you think you are told something you really don't want to hear. Like the expectation was not met. And then all of a sudden, and it wasn't by the lawyer, it was just about the clear law. Like the legal system is going to say, no, you're not going to be able to do this. So we could fight it, we can try it, but the likelihood is like maybe there's a 2% chance that you'll get that. And it's very hard for people to really accept that. So all of a sudden, it's easier to say, oh, my lawyer is not on my side. Well,
Yep.
no, actually, your lawyer is on your side when they do that because they're not letting you spend all this kind of crazy money to go down a rabbit hole, which might never end, right?
Yep.
So it is, I want people to understand that 9 out of 10 times, if a lawyer is really telling you, hey, this isn't worth it, oh my God, you've hit gold with that lawyer.
Yeah.
Like literally have hit gold. And they could say, we can try, but I can
Right.
tell you how this is, it's going to end up and or most likely will end up. I mean, nobody has that. And then it's up to them, but at the same time, you know, I think it's amazing that a lawyer tells the truth and
Right.
says to you those things. And it's
Right.
not about the lawyer being, against you. And a lot of times it's also an ego thing
Right.
because you're making decisions that are like ego based, a lot of them, right? It's like, oh well, I deserve this amount of alimony and I deserve this amount of child support, or I don't want 50-50 and I deserve more because I'm the mom, or whatever it is, right? The stories that they're saying, it's
Mm.
frustrating when you're told that's kind of not how it goes.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, I
Yeah.
think that too is a big product of just setting expectations. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Think it's my job to set reasonable expectations. And if I'm coming in
Mhm.
there and saying, "Oh, you're going to get all this money, you're going to get all this stuff," and then all of a sudden, the reality is like we're now putting pen to paper, and you're like, "Uh-oh." I mean, that's never a position I want to be as a lawyer.
Never.
Is over promising and under delivering, and so
Totally.
setting expectations is so 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 important.
Okay, so well, I mean, I can tell you that I've had stories that come to me that I'm like, it's amazing. They're already like 500,000 in of legal fees, and where do you go from there? It just keeps going and going. So I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate this conversation. So that I hope it hits home for people out there that are like, yeah, no, this, I get it. I do feel a little bit, I don't know, that my lawyer might not be in my corner. And so
Yeah,
again, I mean, listen, maybe they're not. So you have to explore that, but communicate to your lawyer. They're
100%.
human and you can communicate, hey, I didn't really love what you said the other day, but help me explain it,
Yep.
explain it to me so that I can understand and digest it if this is a legal thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
And one thing that I think is important too, it's like, I mean, one of the things that um, goes into communication is, I mean, you were talking earlier about how you really have to compartmentalize, the legal versus, the emotional aspect. I mean,
mhm,
that's important. And I think it's important also to find a lawyer that sort of isn't just like one role, you know what I mean? Like you have to
mhm,
bridge that gap a little bit, but it's kind of like services like you guys provide, like divorce coaching and communities and stuff like that. Like
yeah,
it's a special agency relationship.
mhm,
If I could have a client with a divorce coach or some support
mhm,
person hear this and reflect on it in a different way,
yeah,
afterwards, commiserate. I mean, that again, that's like it's all about this retention because like what you're saying is, you're talking with a lawyer, you're sitting across from a fucking divorce lawyer.
I know.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God. My anxiety's high. Maybe I've got like a hair out of place and that's like the only thing that someone's focusing on and no one's really hearing
mhm,
what I'm saying. But if there's sort of somebody who's not as invested in the process and now invested in you, but not as invested in the process, that can like
mhm,
recap that with you and reflect on it and give them your impressions. I mean, that's also super, super, super important in
yeah,
navigating this as a team, right?
oh
And
yeah.
some
I wish
people,
I had that person when I was going through it. I honestly,
yeah,
and that's why I became that person. And it's most of the time I'm spending time on that. Like it's always communication first,
yeah,
right? It's like
for sure.
communication from the lawyer, help me understand it, especially when you're forwarding the correspondence from the other lawyer, which isn't your lawyer. And that's a whole nother ball game that you're like
Yeah,
emotionally, um, well,
yeah,
and I wanted to also touch, I know like we're gonna, and this kind of this conversation for now, but we have so much to talk about. But there was another thing that I really, to your point, it's like how much should a lawyer hold the space for emotion? Like how much is too much? And
yeah,
that's the thing. Like to your point, you're like, oh, I have clients asking me to do this and doing that because they're overwhelmed and they just cannot do it. But like,
yeah,
what is
yeah,
that? Because you have to be human, but at the same time, it's like how much emotion,
yeah. I mean, that's sort of when a divorce coach kind of like
Mhm.
comes in, and can sort of objectively understand that. I mean, look, like I'm pretty forward with people in letting
Mhm.
them know, and I don't think there's a right answer in saying, how much can I share? Some people I've got, you know, my clients just showing they want to see pictures of my kids. They want to, show me texts from a friend or from their new boyfriend or girlfriend. Like it
Mhm.
could be, it's whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? I mean, to me, it depends on the context of the conversation. It
Mhm.
depends on what you're talking about, and it depends on where you're at in the proceedings, right? If you're just talking about like, hey, can you give me a quick status? Everything's pretty status quo, like there's nothing monumental happening. That's a little different than, all right, we got to really sit down and go through this. You know what I mean? Like not every meeting is this high intensity, like let's work out, the specifics of your life. It's more like,
Mhm.
hey, here's the status of your case. Do you have any questions? Do you want to talk about stuff? But I
Mhm.
mean, to me, like the emotional aspect, it's important to understand for me contextually, like where you're at. And
Yeah.
are you struggling with something? Like, is anything going on? That's important for me to understand. I don't need to necessarily know that this trauma that you're experiencing comes from your childhood and in second grade you
Yeah.
saw. I don't need like, but it's like, I'm just so stressed out. Okay, well, at least let's try to find ways that I can help with to reduce your
Mhm.
stress, right?
Right.
If you need more context to an email, if you need more context or prep for a court date, if you need a follow-up, like, if
Mhm.
you need to draw boundaries with your whatever. I mean, like I can objectively help with that to try to steer the ship, but like what you guys do, it's like let me download a little bit. Like let me hear what's going on, and then let me work directly with my client, like you guys, and
Mhm.
saying, I just heard the same thing that you did in a vastly different way, right?
Right.
He's giving
Right.
good advice, he's giving logical advice, like I appreciate, like it's just a good download type thing. And
Totally.
so I don't know that there's a right answer for too much
Yeah.
emotion. It just doesn't, it's important for context, but I would also like it. I don't know. I wouldn't want to work with somebody that's a robot that only spits out legal advice, you know?
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
have to like
Yeah.
you have to have a soul and be able to have a legitimate conversation with people.
Yes, it's really important. And I just important to note that your legal counsel isn't there to solve those issues, but they are there to support whatever way they can to mitigate maybe some of that spiral that you're going through, right? And also to your point, like a lot of times we'll decipher a lot of the correspondence and help them really understand where the lawyer is coming from.
Yeah, for sure.
And it is very important because it's like, no, this isn't coming from that place where you think he's against you or she's against you. It's really coming from a place of like they're giving you the information firsthand so that you can make a decision that's good for you under
Right.
these circumstances rather than just guessing some decision. Um,
Definitely. Definitely.
so yeah,
You
no,
know,
it's
one other thing that you mentioned, Lila, is like I think when in your intro you said, I'm concerned that my lawyer's too close with the other lawyers
yes, I wanted to bring that up before we
and
start.
now
Yes, absolutely.
and they're colluding against me and whatever.
Hmm.
So I think the reality of the situation is that these divorce communities are pretty small.
Hmm.
Most people like, it'd be very unusual for me to hear a name of somebody that practices in one of the counties that I work regularly and be
Right.
like I don't at least have some degree of relationship with them.
Hmm.
And so it's a fair, even with the judges, I mean, there's all these events and stuff where everybody's together and it's just like it's a small community. Um,
Hmm.
and so the reality is that your lawyer is going to have some relationship, good, bad, or otherwise, with the person on the other side. And frankly,
Right.
it's better for everybody if everybody
Hmm.
gets along, right?
Totally.
If I had a good relationship with somebody, maybe we're not spending a ton of money and time and energy gearing up for this big hearing when we can just have a conversation and I can pick up the phone and be like, what are we doing?
Right.
And the process works smoother. And sometimes people take that type of behavior as, I'm too close with the other lawyer and he's not standing up for me and stuff like that. When in reality, you're getting to the finish line and getting through the process faster, which has an
Exactly.
unbelievable value to you
Hmm.
beyond just fighting these little skirmishes, right? So that's kind of what I think about that.
I love what you just said because it's so true. And I have often said that to some clients. But I think it's really important to highlight in all of this is that, the legal process isn't built for emotional justice. So there is often, that's goes back to the point of the emotion. There's the legal, and that's it. It's like you kind of have to take that emotion out and know that that's what your lawyer is doing for you. Although, of course, they would want you to be heard, seen with your emotion and everything. That's you don't have time for that, and also it doesn't work that way. So it's just not going to happen, right?
Right.
And if you understand that early enough, I think the relationship with your legal counsel would be so much better. So
Agreed.
anyway, thank you so much, Jordan, honestly, for your insights today. I always love what you have to say and the way that you operate, and such a great legal counsel. Anybody would be lucky to work with you for sure. And I know that people should follow you on Instagram because you have such a great presence there,
Great.
and a great way to contact you and find out all your information. And of course, I'll put it in the show notes. And yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And like I said, I just think what you guys do in providing these type of resources is just so valuable. And like, I don't know, as a lawyer who's somebody sort of on the other side to this,
Hmm.
it's hard and I lose perspective of what it feels like as independently to go through it. And I mean, just to me, it's like to have that type of support system and what you guys provide is just awesome. And
It's why
so
we do what we do. Yeah,
to
it
go
is.
in
I
and
know.
it's very helpful for everybody. And so on behalf of the entire audience, thanks for putting that together.
Thank you. Oh, I enjoyed this conversation. And I love that because that will go into my love book, which my audience knows all about. All right.
Awesome.
Thank
Awesome.
you.